Welcome, brave souls, to British Hauntings, where we chase the shadows that linger in the world's darkest corners. Tonight, we're across the pond in Hudson, New York, at the infamous cemetery Schoolhouse, a place where the past doesn't rest and the graves whisper secrets. They say no one leaves this place unchanged if they leave at all. Join us as we step inside this haunted relic, where the spirits of forgotten children, led by a girl named Eliza, still roam the halls. Will we uncover the truth behind the chilling tales, or will we become part of the Schoolhouse's story? Grab your courage, because this is no ordinary ghost hunt. If you're ready for the paranormal, hit that like button to fuel our hunt. Subscribe to British Hauntings for more spine-chilling adventures, and ring that bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below. Have you ever felt a presence you couldn't explain? Share your story, and let's get this investigation started. Time to step inside. Let's start the video. The old schoolhouse on the edge of Hudson, New York, squatted low in the shadow of its forgotten cemetery, its clapboard walls peeling like dead skin. Moonlight bled through the October clouds, glinting off the gravestones that ringed the property, their names worn to whispers by time. I'd booked the place on a whim, drawn by the Airbnb listing's coy mention of paranormal charm. A weekend alone, I thought, would clear my head after the divorce. Just me, a bottle of bourbon, and the quiet of the Catskills. But the quiet never came. The key was cold in my hand as I unlocked the door, the hinges groaning like a warning. Inside, the air was thick, smelling of damp wood and something sharper. Chalk dust, maybe, or rust. The living room was frozen in time. A sagging couch, a fireplace blackened by years of soot, and a single bulb flickering overhead. My boots echoed on the hardwood as I dropped my bag, the sound swallowed by the house's unnatural hush. Outside, the cemetery loomed through the window, its stones leaning like crooked teeth. I poured a drink and tried to settle in, but the house felt alive, watchful. The floorboards creaked upstairs, soft at first, like someone pacing barefoot. I froze, glass halfway to my lips, telling myself it was just the old place settling. But then came the giggle, a child's laugh, high and clear, slicing through the silence. My heart lurched. The listing hadn't mentioned kids nearby, and the nearest neighbor was a mile down the road. I set the glass down, my hand shaking, and climbed the stairs. The air grew colder with each step, my breath fogging in the dim light. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with doors to rooms I hadn't checked. The giggle came again, fainter now, from the end of the hall. I followed it to a door painted shut, the wood scarred with scratches that looked too deep for a child's nails. I pressed my ear against it and heard nothing but my own pulse hammering. Back downstairs, I grabbed my phone to call the host, but the signal was dead. The Wi-Fi too. I cursed, pacing the living room, when something caught my eye. A small, dusty book tucked under the couch. It was a ledger, its pages brittle, filled with names and dates from the 1800s. Hudson Schoolhouse Register, it read. Scrawled in the margins were words like unruly, punished, and gone. One entry, dated 1847, listed a girl named Eliza, aged 9, with a single word beside her name, missing. A thud shook the ceiling, heavy enough to rattle the bulb. I grabbed the poker from the fireplace and crept back upstairs, my mouth dry. The painted door was ajar now, a sliver of darkness spilling out. I pushed it open, the hinges screaming, and stepped into a room that hadn't been touched in decades. Desks were scattered, their surfaces carved with initials. A chalkboard hung crooked, its surface smeared with faint, looping handwriting. Stay with us. The giggle came again, behind me. I spun, poker raised, but the room was empty. My shadow stretched long across the floor, cast by a light I hadn't turned on. Then, the door slammed shut, the lock clicking with a finality that turned my knees to water. The temperature plummeted, my breath clouding in bursts. Something brushed my arm, small, cold fingers, tugging like a child wanting attention. I swung the poker blindly, hitting nothing but air. The chalkboard rattled, the writing shifting before my eyes, forming new words. You're ours now. The giggles multiplied, a chorus of voices circling me, some laughing, some sobbing. I backed against the wall, my heart clawing at my ribs, and saw them, shapes in the dark, small and pale, their eyes hollow. Eliza stood at the front, her dress tattered, her face too still for a child's. I don't remember running. I don't remember grabbing my keys or stumbling into the car, but I remember the rear-view mirror as I peeled out, the schoolhouse shrinking behind me, its windows glowing with faces that weren't there when I arrived. The cemetery was silent, the gravestones watching like sentinels. I drove straight through the night, the bourbon left behind, the ledger still clutched in my passenger seat. I never went back. The host didn't answer my calls, and the listing vanished from the site. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear that giggle, sharp and close, and feel those cold fingers on my arm. The schoolhouse doesn't let go. It's still there, waiting, its graves hungry for company. The highway stretched dark and endless as I sped away from the cemetery schoolhouse, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The ledger sat on the passenger seat, its worn leather cover seeming to pulse under the dashboard's faint glow. I didn't dare touch it again, not after flipping through more pages, back at a gas station an hour out of Hudson. Names, so many names. Children from the 1800s, their fates scrawled in faded ink. Sent home, fever, lost. Eliza's name appeared again and again, each entry marked with that same chilling word, missing. The last page was different though, a single line, in fresher ink, no date, they never leave. My phone stayed dead, no bars, no matter how far I drove. The radio hissed static, occasionally spitting out a word or two. Stay, hours, before dissolving back into white noise. I told myself it was interference, but my skin prickled, and the rearview mirror kept drawing my eyes. Nothing was there, just the empty road and the black silhouette of trees. Still, I felt watched, like the schoolhouse had sent something after me. By 3 a.m. I hit a diner just off I-87, a neon-lit relic with a flickering open 24/7 sign. The waitress, an older woman with tired eyes, poured me coffee without asking. "You look like you've seen something," she said, her voice gravelly. I laughed it off, but my hands shook as I sipped the bitter brew. The ledger sat on the counter, and her gaze lingered on it. "Where'd you get that?" she asked too sharply. "Found it in Hudson," I said, hesitating. Her face tightened and she leaned in close, smelling faintly of cigarette smoke. "You been to that schoolhouse, haven't you?" My silence was answer enough. She shook her head, muttering, "Folks don't leave that place the same. Some don't leave at all." She slid a napkin toward me, scribbling a name, Father Daniel, and a phone number. "He's in Catskill, knows things about that place. Call him before you go back." But she was already walking away, wiping her hands like she wanted no part of me. Back in my car, the air felt wrong, heavy like the schoolhouse had followed me. I locked the doors and dialed Father Daniel, expecting a voicemail. He picked up on the first ring, his voice calm but clipped. "You've been to the schoolhouse," he said, not a question. I spilled everything, the giggles, the chalkboard, Eliza's face in the dark. He listened, silent, until I mentioned the ledger. "Burn it," he said, "now. Don't open it again." I didn't listen, I couldn't. The ledger felt alive, like it was part of me now. Instead, I drove to a motel, the kind with buzzing fluorescent lights and stained carpets. In my room, I locked the door, wedged a chair under the knob, and opened the ledger again. The pages had changed. My name was there, in that same fresh ink, next to today's date. Below it, a single word. The room's temperature dropped, the light flickering like it had in the schoolhouse. A giggle, her giggle, came from the bathroom. The door was closed, but water dripped from under it, pooling on the carpet. I grabbed the ledger and bolted, not stopping until I was back in my car, engine roaring. The motel's neon sign blinked out as I peeled away, and in the rear view I saw her, Eliza, standing in the parking lot, her pale face framed by that tattered dress, her eyes locked on mine. I drove until dawn, the ledger still beside me, its weight heavier than it should be. Father Daniel's words echoed in my head, but burning it felt like giving in, like admitting I'd never escape. The giggles followed me, faint but constant, woven into the hum of the tires. I don't know where I'm going now, but every mile feels like a loop, pulling me back toward Hudson. The schoolhouse isn't done with me, and deep down, I know the graves are still waiting. I forgot not. The road blurred under the car's headlights, a gray ribbon unspooling through the pre-dawn dark. My eyes burned from lack of sleep, but every time I blinked, I saw Eliza's face, those hollow eyes, that unnatural stillness. The ledger sat on the passenger seat, its leather cover catching the faint glow of passing streetlights. I hadn't touched it since the motel well, but it seemed to hum, a low vibration I felt in my bones. The radio was off now, the static too much like whispers, and the silence was worse. The giggles hadn't stopped. They were softer, like a child, humming a lullaby, just out of sight. But they were there, burrowing into my skull. I'd been aiming for Catskill to find Father Daniel, but the GPS was useless, looping me through back roads that didn't match the map. Street signs flickered in and out, some blank, others showing names from the ledger: Clara, Thomas, Eliza. My hands shook on the wheel, and the air in the car grew colder, my breath fogging despite the heater blasting. The rearview mirror stayed empty, but I didn't trust it anymore. Something was behind me, just beyond the glass. By 4 a.m., I pulled into a gas station, its fluorescent lights harsh against the night. The clerk, a kid barely out of high school, barely looked up from his phone as I paid for coffee and a lighter. Father Daniel's words gnawed at me. Burn it. I stood by the car, the ledger in my hands, the lighter's weight heavy in my pocket. The cover felt warm now, almost pulsing, and when I cracked it open, the pages fluttered on their own, stopping on my name again. The ink was darker, the word now underlined with a jagged stroke. Below it, new words had appeared. She sees you. A giggle bubbled up from the darkness beyond the gas pumps, sharp and close. I slammed the ledger shut and stumbled back, my coffee spilling across the pavement. The clerk didn't notice, but the security camera above the door swiveled toward me, its red light blinking like an eye. I got in the car and floored it, the lighter forgotten on the ground. The road to Catskill felt wrong, like it was bending back toward Hudson. I passed the same rusted barn 3 times, though I hadn't turned around. My phone buzzed, finally alive, but the screen showed no caller, just a string of numbers that matched a date in the ledger, 1847. I didn't answer, but a voice crackled through anyway, small and sing-song. "You can't leave, David." My name. I hadn't told anyone at the schoolhouse my name. Panic clawed at my chest as I pulled over, the car idling on a stretch of road flanked by skeletal trees. The cemetery schoolhouse was miles away, but it felt closer, like it was breathing down my neck. I grabbed the ledger, ready to hurl it into the woods, when the passenger door clicked open. Nothing was there, no wind, no movement, but the air turned thick, smelling of chalk and damp earth. The giggles swelled, a chorus now, coming from every direction. Shadows flickered in the trees, small and quick, darting just beyond the headlights. I floored the gas again, the car lurching forward, but the road seemed to narrow, the trees closing in. The ledger slid to the floor, falling open to a page I hadn't seen, a drawing, crude and childlike, of a man in a car, his face scratched out. Around it, tiny figures held hands, their eyes black pits. The giggles turned to whispers, overlapping, urgent. "Stay with us, David, stay." The car sputtered, the engine choking like it was drowning. I slammed the brakes and the world went quiet. Ahead, in the headlights' beam, stood the schoolhouse. Not a mile marker or a road sign, just the schoolhouse, its windows glowing faintly, the cemetery sprawling behind it. I hadn't turned around, I hadn't driven back, but there it was, waiting. The driver's door wouldn't open, the windows wouldn't roll down. The ledger lay open on the floor, my name now circled in that same jagged ink. A small, cold hand brushed my neck, and Eliza's giggle filled the car, soft as a lullaby. "You're home," she whispered, her voice right behind my ear. The headlights flickered out, and the schoolhouse's glow swallowed the dark. The last thing I saw was the ledger, its pages turning on their own, filling with my name over and over as the graves outside